So I have dibs on not driving today.
Me too. Chuck, you're up.
Okay, let's see. How do I make my screen? Oh, screeny screen. Let's see. iTerm. Oh, and there was this showcase. There we go. So we're looking at dotenv. Let me put that up so people can see it and stuff. Copy link. So we're going to code read dotenv.
Yeah, that sounds fun. I think I've heard from multiple people this is a cool project, and I've been meaning to look at it forever. So.
Okay. Now I'm going to use this crappy program called Emacs in order to browse through the code. So just be warned. That's.
We'll try not to hold that against you.
Yeah.
All right. So I should click on this link myself and clone it.
There's like 3 Emacs users on this podcast.
Dude, what's wrong with those people?
We have Emacs unanimity. It's just so weird.
I know, right?
All right, how do I share my screen?
It's the green arrow button over on the left.
Oh, wow. It's giving me like 10 million options.
I should be muted. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I am not muted then. Okay. I'm going to stop bothering to push my mute button.
Okay, I'm embiggening my font so that, since we're recording this.
Embiggen it.
I found a really cool way to make Hangout screen sharing bigger. Minimize in your browser. Make everything smaller because the video window takes up all the remaining space. So if you set your zoom to like 2% or 12%, it'll make everybody else's cameras down in the gutter go down like to the size of like 2 pixels, and it makes the sidebar chat get really small. Well, you can actually just close that, but it'll make it unreadable, and you end up with the video almost full screen in your browser.
That's kind of scary cool, actually.
I look better in 2 pixels. That's why I do audio podcasts.
I don't fit into 2 pixels.
Not without a compression algorithm.
Yep. So.
Oh, hang on.
An error occurred while starting Emacs.
Yeah, I have Ziki load into Emacs when I run it, and so if I use Ruby 2, then it explodes.
Ouch. If you had used Vim.
If I used Vim, then I would hate my... No, I'm just kidding. I used Vim for a long time, so I could probably limp along just fine. But
if you used Vim, you'd hate yourself, but you would do it efficiently.
Right.
That's right. I would have to relinquish control. Oh, that was a terrible pun.
I made a joke on Twitter a couple of weeks ago where I basically said I was doing something really complicated, and Emacs told me that it was overkill, and nobody laughed. And so I had to follow it up with, because when Emacs tells you something is overkill, you know, and nobody laughed.
I laughed, I just didn't tweet my laugh.
I'm telling it a 3rd time in the hopes that somebody will please laugh at this joke.
That's awesome. Yeah.
I just got a courtesy laugh from my wife off camera.
I heard that.
So I'm a little curious. Oh, that's the long and the short of it there for .env Rails, huh? That's how they do that gem?
.env Rails, there's gem file lib, .env Rails, gem name. Interesting.
So then if we go look at this...
I bet that file loads .env and something else. A rail tie. Yeah. That makes sense. So a rail tie looks for a particular file.
Now, when it's recording, is it recording what I'm seeing? So should I click on the me to make it not show you guys while you talk? Because it keeps flipping back and forth.
Yeah, that's probably a good point. I'm not sure which one it shows.
Okay.
It shows whoever's talking.
Right, and for me it shows my screen. I'm just going to peg it to my screen, and then if you guys You want to flip off the camera or something? Just tell me and I'll show you off.
Okay. I'm gonna also.
That doesn't actually fix it. If we turn off our cameras and then we talk, it will on the Hangout on Air. It will hide Chuck's screen and it will show our avatar with the audio pulsing of us talking. It is the most useful interface since Skype.
He meant the other kind of flip off, David. The one that involves your middle finger.
Oh, that one. Okay.
Yeah. All right, let me see. There might be something else here. Cameraman. Dave totally muted. Are you still there, James?
Yes, I am still here. I muted myself so that it would stop switching to me when I'm not talking.
Yeah, and I muted myself so that I could order my wife to get me soda.
All right. Well,
but we got to hear her laugh, so that was totally worth it.
Yes.
All right. Well, yeah. Hopefully, it's just showing my screen. And if somebody's watching this and knows stuff about Google Hangouts, then tell me later. All right. So here's the trick right here. It just goes and finds the .env environment.
So .env development, .env test, .env production.
Yep.
If that file exists and not define .env development, or sorry, .env deployment, so that stops it when it's in some kind of deployment scenario, and then it says, warning, auto-loading will be removed, blah, 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 look up this if you care, and then load it.
Yep.
And
then it also loads just naked.env.
Right. And it tells Spring to watch that file in case it changes, because new versions of Rails come with Spring.
Right.
To handle the loading.
So then it can update your environment.
Agreed. All right, so I think we understand this part at least a little bit.
Yeah, but the I want it to auto-load my end file.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. So .env deployment. It kind of makes me wonder what it is. It gives a link there. .env deployment. I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah. I'm going to share it here in our little... Oh, whoops. I hit the wrong button. All right. So we can showcase items from the internet.
So yeah, this is, again, the discussion of you shouldn't do this in production. However, some find .env to be a convenient way to configure applications in staging and production. This gem makes it easier to do that by adding support for multiple environments and Capistrano.
Okay. I just add it to my Capistrano symlink this thing list. And so it just creates it in my shared and then symlinks it back to my app when I deploy. I haven't had to do anything more complicated than that.
This says by default .env will be loaded when .env deployment is required. It will not override existing environment variables. If you're using Rails or RackEMB is set, an environment-specific file like .env production will be loaded and override. So it sounds to me like this is for people that still want the auto-loading behavior in production, which it sounds like is being pulled out of .env, and then this will do its own thing. So if we go back to the code where we notice the constant, it just stops loading if that constant is defined, .env deployment.
Okay.
Because that will be handled by dotenv deployment, right?
Okay, that makes sense.
I'm assuming.
Sounds good.
All right, so dotenv, this thing, what does it do? We're kind of figuring out the Rails side, but
I was just curious.
yeah, me too.
Okay.
So this is the main file, because if you look at the README, it says that you should require dotenv and then call load. And we can see here that that's the main code, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, can I go up on this file as something that bugs me?
Yes.
Can I go up on multiple somethings that bug me?
I'm trying to figure out why there's a... Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. What was your question?
Just why do you have a protected... Is it just to signal to people that this isn't a public method?
So yeah, I have two complaints with that. One, I believe that method definition below it is still public. Am I right about that?
It's a module, so I'm assuming...
I think the keywords public, protected,
Yes.
private, I believe they only affect instance definitions.
That's right. You have to make a call after defining the method. You have to call protected class method or protected, and give it the name of the method that you want to hide.
Right. So protected in this context does not do anything, I'm pretty sure, and I'm pretty sure we would still find that method in a public list. So that's
it's just a signal then. It's just symbolic.
Maybe. I think they meant it to be private, I'm assuming. Let's see, module, yeah. I don't know. If they wanted it to be private, you'd need to do private class method, like David said, :with, and that has to be after the definition of self.with. The other thing that bothers me is the use of protected over private. Protected is for like one special case, and it's the case where like you're writing an equals method or something, and you need to get at something kind of private on another object that's the same type as you. You can declare that protected, and it allows you to get to it. So like, if you had a feet object that internally stored, I don't know, inches or whatever, because that would be stupid. But if you had that and then you wrote an equals to take like, yourself is always included, obviously, because object orientation, and then other, so you could do self.feet or inches equal other.inches. That's like the one case protected was invented for.
There's a second use case, and that is when you want the parent class to create partial behavior that the child class can extend, like is it called template method pattern?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and basically you would like say my SI units are such and so. I am a distance unit of this, and then you could have like, this is a stupid example of OO, but you could have like an inches class and a centimeters class and a meters class and a parsecs class, and they could all access. There's no reason to duplicate the distance variable. That should be pushed up to the superclass, and so you want it protected so that the children can access it.
So wait, I don't think I understand that.
Okay, I feel less dumb. James doesn't understand it.
If they're private, how come you can't access them?
That's a good question. This is part of my C++ showing through. I know that in C++, your children don't inherit. If you have it now in Ruby, all private means is that you can't send that message to an explicit receiver. Can a child send an implicit message to itself and access a private method in the parent class?
Yes, I believe so. Chuck, can you open up an IRB session and we try it?
Let's find out.
I'm curious.
Let me embiggen this one too. You can tell I have a bazillion tabs open in iTerm, but whatever.
That's awesome.
All right.
I love the fact that reading dotenv is teaching us nothing about environments, but everything about Ruby. This is why we're doing this.
Private variables and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are we doing?
So let's just make like a parent class. Yeah, class parent or whatever. Just whatever. And it just needs like well, make it private. And then just define a method hidden or whatever, HIDDEN. Yeah. Ugliness, there you go.
Yep.
Return whatever. Yep, there you go. And then okay. And then if we make
have a child class that inherits.
Yep.
And just says ugliness is, well, like in initialize, just have it call ugliness.
Yep, sounds great.
Puts ugliness.
Okay, make a child object and we'll get our answer. Yep.
Bam!
Works fine.
Okay, so there's 2 use cases in C++. Pity that's not the language we're working with here.
It's only, so in Ruby you can still call private methods of the parent class.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't call them with an explicit receiver
Yep.
unless they are a writer, meaning they end in equal sign.
Yep.
And then you can call it with the one explicit receiver self.
Yep. So basically the only really valid use case for the protected scope in Ruby is to allow a class to interact with some protected data in its siblings.
In its siblings, that's right. Yeah, it has to be another class of the same type. The realistic use case that usually comes up is when you're trying to decide if two objects are equal based on their inner data, right?
Yeah.
Other than that, most people...
Yeah,
the spaceship, right. Other than that, most people mean private when they say protected.
So in this case, one child object could call size on the other child object.
That's right, but you could not call it from outside of a child.
And since ugliness is private, you can't call private on the other, or ugliness on the other child object.
From the outside, that's right.
From the outside, right.
Right. Or even from inside another child. You're right.
Right.
Okay.
Cool.
Meanwhile, back to dotenv. Rant over, right?
Okay. One other thing I want to just clarify real quick. So it's public class or private class method like this.
Yes.
Yep. And then colon with.
Okay.
That's how you make it private, right there.
Now the next thing that I'm curious about is in Ruby 2 or 2.1, one of them. The def, like in Chuck's IRB session, you saw that he defined the width method, or no, he defined the size method, and it returned the symbol of the method's name.
Yep.
Do that again, Chuck. Only create a class method. So do like class child def self dot,
I believe it still works.
So if it works, then you could actually prefix. You could say private class method def self.width.
You're missing a def in there.
Huh? What did I do?
Def.
Def.
Yeah.
Okay. Am I still in the context of the... I don't think I am. I think it barked me back out.
Yeah.
Private def.
Just put a...
Put a what?
Never mind, you're good. Keep going. Yes, you can see it right there. Colon with. Yeah, it works. So you could alternately, instead of the way we showed it, you could prefix the word def with private class method.
Yep.
Okay.
Because def now returns a symbol. That symbol would get classed to private class method.
Oh, I see.
And boom, you're done.
So you can do something like this.
Exactly.
Yep, that should also work.
Huh.
If you do new class.with, it should tell you you can't call that private method.
Yep.
Yep.
That's cool.
Yeah, cool, right? Alright, so that was all like a minor rant on my part. It really doesn't say anything about the code.
Yeah, well, it's still an interesting discussion, and I learned about 5 things, so.
Yeah. This kind of stuff is why I'm here.
Yep.
It's fun.
Should we start with because it looks like the rest of these I'll call it.
Yeah, sure. Let's figure it out. Talk us through it, Chuck.
Alright, so file names is basically you can pass in as many parameters as you want to width, and it drops them all into file names. It adds .env to it if it's empty. And then it starts building a hash. It starts building a hash. And
micro rant in Ruby 2, each with object was designed for exactly this purpose.
I was just going to say the same thing. Yep.
This abuse of inject. Stop abusing inject.
So each with object?
Yep.
Yeah, so the reason this is a bad use of inject, in my opinion...
You're cutting out, James, or freezing.
Is that... Sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Okay.
You're back.
Inject is meant to carry forward some value for you. So, like, the idea is if you had a list of numbers and you're running through, summing them all up, then the first time it carries forward the sum from the first two, and the second time it carries forward the previous sum with the third number, whatever. But you make some value, and it's inject's job to grab that value and bring it forward.
Mm-hmm.
But the way inject is being used here, that's not what's happening. Yep. One object is created when inject is launched there, that empty set of braces, that's a hash, and that same object is being mutated or modified all the way through the loop. So it's not grabbing a new value and bringing it forward. Well, it is actually doing that, which is the wasteful part, because the value is always the exact same object, literally the same object.
Yep.
So the thing that inject does for you is not being taken advantage of here.
Yep.
And that's go ahead.
This was a super clever Ruby trick in like 2009, 2010, and I used it all the time. I loved it because basically this lets you take a list of things like in a list like an array, and basically build up a hash out of it somehow. And it's really clever, and it's really smart, and it's really fun. And now that everybody figured out, no, wait, this is the fold method or the reduce method, and people are abusing it to turn it into like this each with object notion. The one change you'll have to make, Chuck, is flip the arguments inside the pipes.
Oh, you know what? Now that we went up on this, I'm going to say that we're wrong.
Okay. Okay. Can I finish my little micro rant?
Yes, please.
Which is that going forward into the future, what I have done differently is I have stopped using the inject to get myself out of the habit of injecting hashes. I no longer call the inject method ever. I use each with object if I want to turn a list into a hash. And if I want to collapse something down and reduce it, I use reduce, which is an alias. It's just an alias of inject. And I'm glad that reduce is there because it lets me lets me think map reduce, that kind of pair of things. And if you reduce a list to a hash, technically you can do it, but somebody will go, that's crazy, what are you doing?
So, hang on, I do want to point out, I got this wrong. I thought this loop was doing something different than it is, and I thought it was one character different. And the difference is Chuck, can you go to line 31 and put a bang after the word merge? This is what I thought I read. In this case, it would be the exact same object carrying forward because it would be mutated in place, and that would be carrying forward the same object. They actually did what, who's this? Brandon Keepers, right?
Yep.
What Brandon actually did was not use the bang method. So merge returns a new hash each time, and inject is carrying that forward. So it is a correct usage of inject, I guess technically. I would still say this is definitely a job for each with object. And instead of merge on each with object, yeah, man, I really don't even get. Because what happens when you call?
I think it still works, right? Because what we're doing is we're doing a merge, we're getting a new hash back, and then we're throwing the old one away. Why not do a bang merge and just keep it around?
That's right. And to just build up the hash. What I'm weirded out by, merge is only being called with one argument. What does that do? Like usually you see it called with a key value pair. What happens when you call merge with just one?
As long as the argument
hash.
It's merging another hash.
Right,
yeah.
It's a hash. You're right. Got it.
And you can see that it's, this environment.new.apply should be returning a hash.
I know exactly what it does now. Okay, yes, got it. So it was more common in the old days, what David and I were talking about, that people would write hash, bracket, key, bracket, equals, semicolon, hash.
Yeah.
Because they had to find a way inside inject to return the hash and not the the simple assignment. A bunch of hashes together. So actually, I'm less down on this approach than I was now that I understand it. I think it's actually a viable use. I personally would still use each with object and merge because I think it's just less wasteful.
Yeah.
Merge bang, you mean?
Yes, you're right.
So it would look more like this. I still don't, fundamentally at least, because on the surface they look very similar. So is there really an advantage to using each with object here as opposed to inject?
It should be a little bit faster because what inject is doing, it starts with an empty hash. So assume you have like 3 files, and each file returns a different hash of environment variables to set, I'm assuming.
Right.
And so the first time you go through with an empty hash, then you totally throw that away to merge it with whatever's in the first file. So you end up with an empty hash plus whatever the first file's hash is. And then the second time you throw that away to merge it into yet another hash that's, the contents, the empty hash plus the first hash merged with the second hash, etc. Whereas in the each with object approach, you just build a hash that's going to hold all of them, all of the results. And you one by one fold things into that one hash that stays the same hash.
Yeah, I can see that with the bang here, but what I'm wondering is each with object versus inject, all it really accomplished was inverting the order of these two arguments.
But once you're using a bang, they're not the same. Once you're using a bang, is capturing whatever's returned by the block and then passing it forward to the next to the block. Whereas each with object doesn't have to do that because it's just the same object. So
right, I see.
Passes it forward.
So
yeah, I mean, this is like super minor nitpicking. I should probably say.
Right, but it's the nuance that makes the hash.merge bang make sense in this use case.
Yeah.
There's go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that the each with object, I genuinely think its only purpose, the only reason this method was written, was to get people to stop abusing inject. There's a form of inject, right? Like what we're used to saying is like, list.inject do a comma b, right? And then you add a and b. And the first time through, it picks up the first two things.
A plus b.
Yeah, like if you want to add a plus b, right? And so you pick up, a, and you pick up b. The first time through, it picks up a and b, adds them together, and then that gets fed into A the next time, and then the next time gets put into B, right? And it all just kind of gets accumulated, and so people will tend to start writing, list.inject do, and then they'll say or accumulator, comma, element. And there's a conceptual hiccup, and I've seen about 5 or 6 Rubyists make this accidental loop. I made this leap incorrectly, and so I'm sensitized to it, and I see people do it all the time, that you think that because you've got an accumulator here and you've got an item as the second argument, it's natural to assume that accumulator starts out uninitialized, especially because inject has a second form where you can say numbers.inject and then you put a 0 inside the parentheses, and that's the initial value of an accumulator. And in that model, it really will start by putting 0 in accumulator, and it will only pick up the first item off the list, and it will carry forward from there. And there's so many, this trips up new Rubyists so often, and I'm saying this with absolutely no evidence to back it up, whatever, other than the fact that just my heart just breathes a sigh of relief to see the each with object method exist, that I have to wonder if other people picked up on this and said, we've got to get people away from this inject hack, where they're basically using the accidental existence of an accumulator, and give them a method that explicitly is an each method with an accumulator object. And each with accumulator doesn't make sense if you're writing, a times b in your hash or some other, building up a hash or whatever. So instead of each with accumulator, the natural name for this method would be each with object. And so anyway, so this is kind of a little micro rant about naming and semantics and about intuitive naming, where you read inject, and then you see this thing building this hash and manipulating it and then returning the hash, and you're going, oh my gosh, what is this doing? Whereas somebody writes each with object, new hash, and the new hash is the thing that's going to accumulate over the entire run of eaches. And it's code that kind of leads you to the correct understanding of what the code is doing rather than misleading you into thinking the code is doing something differently, and that common misleading thing that happens to people is that they'll write, numbers.inject 0 do a b a plus b or accumulator comma element, and accumulator plus element is inside the block, and they think that inject doesn't pick up the first 2 elements the first time through, and again, super micro nitpick, except for like at a spiritual level it's huge for me because it's like getting the name right. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think David and I...
If you say no, we'll just have Mandy edit out the last 20 minutes.
I think David and I were like oversensitive to this issue because we saw people using it badly so often. That said, in Brandon's defense, his usage is not that usage here. Can we go back to IRB and I'll show you like a bad example?
Right.
Just real quick.
Yeah.
Okay, so like just do parenthesis 1.3 or something. And then dot inject a hash in there, empty hash. Yeah, and then the block takes 2 arguments, which is the hash and the number. Okay, and then what they would do is they would do hash bracket number bracket equals number.
Some function.
Yeah, whatever.
Like,
and then exactly that right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Run that. So this builds up a hash one value at a time, but the semicolon hash is a hint that you're using the wrong tool for the job, because inject is going to capture whatever is returned, and Ruby makes assignments return whatever the assigned value was. So you would have a hash in the beginning and just carry forward a number, so then you'd get an exception on the second through. Can't index into a number with, well, actually you can index into a number with Ruby, but you can't assign to it. So anyways, yeah, it's silly.
Oh yeah, and I can see that with inject, since sum plus number returns the sum, this is just gonna, it's gonna act nicely if I give it the right initial value.
Yeah, exactly. So, right. So, so interesting. There is one more thing we should mention here, though. David talked about how you can leave that initial value out. Go ahead and do that. Take it out.
That's right.
But these are not quite the same. And I see this trip people up every once in a while. There's a nasty edge case here. Push the up arrow and change the 1.3 to an empty array.
It's going to return nil, isn't it?
Ooh.
Yeah, now you've got a nil in your system.
This one will, but the other one will blow up.
No, the other one will return 0.
Or no, the other one's going to return 0.
Yes. So if you do not want to pick up a nil, you should probably set that initial value.
Oh, that is clever.
So you can kind of get a poison pill there if you don't, if there's nothing to loop over. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Nice. All of that was a bunch of side stuff. Brandon, we're sorry we said bad things about your code. It looks fine.
Yes. I agree with your defense of Brandon, that this is not... I still would tend to want to write this with each with object, because we are merging down into an accumulating hash, but this isn't an outright abuse of the inject.
I agree. Yeah. So now I think I kind of understand.
Tiny abuse.
It's a gray area. I don't know. So yeah, now I think I understand the with method, and that's just that it goes through, grabs some file names, passes them through this environment object, which we assume is going to return a hash of the loaded values, and then it's slowly merging all of those hashes together to form the final set of values. Okay, so here's environment.
All right, so let's see. So it calls new with the file name.
Yes.
And then it loads the file name into an instance variable and calls load, which calls update parser.call read. So read reads the file.
So environment is a hash. You can see that on line 2. It subtypes Ruby's hash. So there where you see update, that's actually an alias for merge bang on the hash. Update.
Oh, really?
I'm pretty sure update and merge bang are the same thing.
Yep. With the exception that the environment class might leak memory.
Why do you say that?
Nope.
Remember the discussion we've talked about in the past about don't subclass hash or string, because they are hard-coded in MRI source code.
Yeah, there are some gotchas to subclassing Ruby's core types. There's a couple of ways it can bite you. I don't remember all of the specifics, and I'm not sure if it applies in this case.
So it actually,
and I'm willing to I'm willing to give a pass to subclassing and hash here, because this is a very short program that's meant to be run at startup and then discarded.
Right.
And so if it leaks memory, okay.
Yeah.
It's gonna leak 80 bytes of RAM. 80 bytes a millisecond.
Right.
So there is some nuance between update and hash bang. Yeah, it adds the contents of the other hash to the hash, and entries with duplicate keys are written with the values from the other hash. Otherwise, the value of the duplicate key is determined by calling the block with a key, and its value in hash. Yeah. Anyway, you can look it up in the docs, but it's not an alias. I think merge just resolves the conflict the other way.
Hang on, I'm looking.
That's weird. It sounds like you can pass a block to update so that you can choose how the conflict is resolved.
Yeah, you can. You can do that with merge as well.
Yeah. Anyway, it looks like it does more or less the same thing, though. It's a merge. So, and the docs actually show. Oh, it does say here, supplemental notes. Merge and update are two names for the same method. Merge, bang, and update. So you are right.
Cool.
Okay.
I just don't understand why it doesn't just say this is an alias. Anyway, so yeah, so merge bang.
Yeah.
So it merges itself with whatever parser.call read gives you.
Yeah.
And then
read just reads in the file. So this is interesting. This is the fact that load, if you look over in our left pane there, the fact that width and load and all that talking we were doing about inject and stuff bothers to return a hash is actually kind of beside the point. The hash tells you what was loaded, but actually it's already been loaded when it returns that hash, because it's actually loaded in the apply method.
Yep.
It assigns directly to the environment. You can see on line 18 and 22, depending on which one you go.
Yep.
So return, kind of interesting. I wonder why the hash gets returned. So you could, like, if you wanted to, you could see what got assigned, I guess. It's interesting.
Yeah, I'm not sure what calling with gets you other than it just loops through the file names. And maybe this hash is being called somewhere else. I don't know.
Yeah, it loops through the file names and it collapses the values that it got from each file name into one giant hash.
Right.
So if you had like a generic .env and a .env development or whatever, you would see what actually ended up getting loaded.
Mm-hmm.
But they are already loaded. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, I was just going to say, this is actually a pattern out of Pooter. Separate iteration. So the with file names is he's I said she because Sandy wrote Pooter. He's extracting out the munging of file names, so that what is left inside these three methods up at the top is just the differences, the way things are applied. Does that make sense? The iteration and munging of file names is extracted out.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes sense. So interestingly, apply loads the stuff into the environment, and we can now see the difference between apply, which is used in the first two methods on the left, and apply bang, which is used in the second. The bang, which I really approve of this use of the exclamation mark, because it's always supposed to mean dangerous, not self-modifying, as most people think. And I do think this is dangerous because it would clobber an existing value in the environment. So.
Yep. Though it is interesting to know that you can make it do that. You know, you can make it clobber something that's out there in the bash environment.
Yes, but only for you and your children.
Right.
You can't affect your parent that way.
No, I agree. I'm just saying within the app, I can override whatever's out there.
Right. Yep. Yeah, that's one of those Unixisms.
Should we look at parser?
Yeah, let's do it.
I like the fact that before you move over to parser, I like the fact that in the environment class he's got apply bang because it's dangerous about what it does to the environment. On the left, he calls apply bang on line 16 from a method called overload. In line 10 is where the load bang is. And I'm like, wait a minute. You've got one method that's not dangerous calling a method that is dangerous. And basically it's what does danger mean relative to this class? And in the .env module, danger on line 10 means this could blow up on you. And in line 15, it's not dangerous to overload the environment because you called a method called overload to do. It's a table saw. If you stick your thumb in it, it's supposed to make you be able to count to 9. And it's not unless you're inside the environment class that apply and apply bang actually behave differently. You know, do you know what I mean? It's like,
yeah.
I love the scoping of danger, if you will, changes between the two classes, and so he's moved the exclamation points a lot more semantically. I like it.
We also used to argue about this on Ruby Talk all the time because a lot of people thought that bang means it modifies the object. Was the dangerous thing, and that's because string has methods like sub, which returns a new string with the replacement done, and sub bang, which returns the same string with maybe the replacement done.
Yep.
But that's not. It actually means dangerous. For example, array has a method called delete, but notice it doesn't have a bang on it, but it does delete something out of your array. That's because the name is self-descriptive. It tells you, I'm deleting this, right? Like, there's not a non-destructive version of that idea. I mean, you could make a whole new array, I guess, without that item in it, but we assume if you're calling delete that what you want is to remove that item from the array. So that's not dangerous. That's what it's supposed to do, right? And and then the idea of the bang is that it makes the method dangerous. So to give an example in core Ruby, there is exit, which will kill your program and run any exit handlers and stuff like that as it goes down. And there is exit bang, which means kill my program right now, no add exit handlers, we're just going down.
I've got a LiveJournal post from way back when LiveJournal was a thing. The title of the post was "Don't Chain Bang Methods," and that'll be evident immediately to James, right? You don't want to take a string and then do sub bang such and so dot, reverse bang dot chain. Don't violate the law of Demeter. Well, that actually it's not a Demeter violation, but sometimes we take a string and we munge the crap out of it, right? We do sub on it and then G sub and then we do a capitalize and then we do a reverse, and we do all these things in order. And we get thinking, well, it would be just more efficient if I just put bang methods on these, because then it would do it all in place. And you can't do that because in string especially, at least back in 1.8.6, this is my age showing a little bit, I don't know if this is still in the case in 2.1, but bang methods behave differently. If they, like sub or gsub, if it blows up, if it fails to replace anything, gsub will return the string, but if gsub thing, I think it returns nil or it throws an exception.
No. So we should probably show that. It's actually interesting. Can you flip over to IRB, Chuck?
Mm-hmm.
Let's just do like James, that's fine. And then James dot sub. So if you use this one and do like A with whatever. Yep, sure, great. Okay, so that returned a new string. So if you now do str, your old string is not changed, right? Right. So, but if you do sub bang, your new string, old string is changed. If you do str, it's actually modified. But watch this. Do the same replacement one more time. There.
Yeah, just replace.
Yep. Right? And the reason you get a nil is because no replacement was made, whereas the one without the bang will always return the modified string even if no replacement was made. So then if you change something onto the end of sub bang thinking you're going to get a modified string, but it does no replacement, you're going to get a nil, and then it's going to blow up, right? This actually comes from an old Perlism, and you probably won't like this, but I'll show you how it's intended to be used. It's intended to be used like this. If space.
Oh, if.
str.
Yes.
str dot subbang xo whatever. And then here you can put replaced or whatever else. Yeah, or whatever. So you can basically make conditional decisions based on whether or not a replacement happened. And I'm pretty sure that was inherited from Perl because that's really common in Perl. But it's kind of gross, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, the readability on it isn't great.
Yeah.
And you have to know that it has that behavior in order to really understand why you're doing that.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. For people coming into Ruby, the apparent behavior is I ran my thumb through the table saw, and I still have my thumb. Therefore, I have cut off both of my hands.
Very nice.
Yeah, it's a weird old Perlism that's probably best not used.
Yep.
Okay, so here we have the parser, which is a giant regex. I love it.
Yeah, if Ruby version 1.8.7, go get help.
Oh no!
So that's
optional.
No, wait. If Ruby version is greater than 1.8.7, go get help.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, you're right. If Ruby version is greater than 1.8.7, substitution command. We're going to have to look at that file in a little bit. That'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so the beginning of the string,
backslash.
Oh, killed it!
Yeah, I killed the wrong buffer. There we go.
If you were using them, just saying.
I would have screwed it up a different way in Vim, I'm sure.
So this regex is really pretty straightforward, and they do a good job of commenting it. So it's the beginning of the string, that's \A, with an optional word exports followed by some white space. Then the actual variable name, which is just word characters or period.
Yeah.
And an equal sign with some, an equal sign or a colon. It allows either one, equal or colon. And optional value begins, so single quoted value, or a double quoted value, or an unquoted value. Gotcha. Very cool. And an optional comment, which is stripped off the end. Interesting. So I actually kind of like this, because this one regex basically tells you what you can legally do. You can put the word export in front of it. If you're used to shellisms, you don't have to. You can put some word. It can have dots in it, which is interesting. And then you can either assign with equals or colon, either one. And then you can do a single quote, set, or a double quote set. And they both allow for escapes. You can see the escapes in there. A single quote followed by one or more escapes or single quote characters. And double quote same way. And then the unquoted value is anything that's not a comment character or the end of the line. So that. And then, yeah, it's optional comment at the end that it strips off or ignores. And that has to be the end of the line, \Z there. Interesting.
So with the comment, does it have to have... So if you have some value that has a hash or a whatever, this character right here in it,
the pound sign?
Yeah, the pound sign. Do you have to put it in quotes?
Yes, you do. That's right. That's how you would get around it.
Okay.
Because those quote regexes, see, they don't look for that character.
Right.
They're only looking for the end of the quote, right? So, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so...
That is a beautiful regex.
I do. I like that regex. Yeah, it's pretty good.
I like that it's broken down line by line, too.
Yeah, I think this is like a poster child example of how to do a complex regex well. Use multi-line mode like this, break it down by sections, comment each section saying what it does, it's totally, even though this is kind of a big regex, it's totally not intimidating, in my opinion.
Yep. What does the X flag do?
That's the multi-line mode. That's what allows it to be on several lines. White space is ignored, and it allows comments, those comments over on the side.
Cool.
So then self.call, that's the method we saw being used on the outside, and that just news it up with the string and does call.
So new, nothing spectacular there.
So if we match the line, get the captures, which are the key and the value.
Right.
Remove the surrounding quotes. If $1 equals...
Is that the first match?
$1 is the first match. Yeah, that's right. If the what is that? If the $1.
Oh, right here. So it's doing a strip and then sub?
Yes.
And so $1 is set here.
Yeah, so, okay. Remove the surrounding quotes. If there was a surrounding quote, it will end up in $sign. So then $sign, check for a double quote. And it's doing the escape. In a double quote, it's turning a \n into a new line character.
Oh, interesting.
Unscoped all characters except $signs, so variables can be escaped properly. So this is kind of like Ruby in the double quotes allow more escaping than single quotes.
Yep. Yeah, because the single quotes, it's just checking substitutions, and then I didn't see where proc was set up.
Yeah, I didn't either. Good point. Oh, proc is substitutions on line 52. It's the loop variable.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
S equals key value.
James, you've got an amazing echo going on.
Uh-oh.
Oh, and so do I. Chuck, did you take your headphones off?
No, sir. No. I don't hear an echo either.
I do hear an echo. You're right.
Yeah, you're not echoing.
I'm not echoing. Okay. Let's see, settings.
That last else if gives you an error if it sees some line. If it wasn't able to parse the line with its big line regex and break it down, then it checks to see if the line is a full comment or full white space. If it's not, it's like, hey, I have no idea what this is.
Did the echo get any better?
Yes, it's
Yep,
fixed.
all gone.
Yeah, I just switched to my podcasting setup.
So yeah, that's interesting. It only allows certain escapes. Which is interesting. The new line turns, \n turns into a new line character, and then the second regex on line 48 takes anything with a \, in front of it except a $, and moves it through. Basically, just removes the \, replaces it with whatever it was. So you can do \. Yeah, you can do \, like double quote, and then it would turn into a normal double quote.
Oh, right.
Gotcha. So what's substitutions? I'm kind of curious about that.
I'm guessing substitutions.
Line 10.
Yeah, that's where it gets assigned, right?
So we're looking at substitutions constants map. I don't see it in here. Is there a substitutions file? No.
Well, constants would be that module on line 3.
Yes. Let me switch back.
So constants would give you that. Constant would get the actual module, and it has a call method, which is what it does. It does proc.call. Call does value, process embedded variables. So this is where it goes through and finds, it scans for a variable regex, an optional \, followed by a $, collect braces with var for substitution, allow for brace wrapping, optionally. So this is like a bash variable name, kind of, not quite, but along the lines of $, all of that. And yes, that's exactly what it does. If you look at line 22, it figures out what variable you were trying to access, and it pulls that from the environment. So when you're setting variables, you can use existing variables like, it's common to use path, the existing part of the path, and then add something onto it.
Or gem home.
Yep.
Right, gem home, yeah. That's actually pretty cool.
Now we're dotenv power users.
Right? Yeah, you can learn tricks. You can use other environment variables to set variables.
Yeah. So what's the commands thing then?
Yeah,
that only
I'm
gets
curious
included
about
if
that too.
we're in 187.
And greater than 187.
Yeah.
Interpolated shell commands. So
Oh, cool.
you have a backslash, require the opening paren, allow any number of non-parens or balanced parens by nesting the command expression. I can tell you why this requires 187, or greater than 187.
Line 7.
You need...
line 7. And
yeah, you need Oniguruma, which was introduced in Ruby 1.9. And the reason you need Oniguruma is line 11 is recursive. The backslash G CMD, that reinserts the expression that is defined starting on line 9. That's what allows it to match balanced parentheses. So everybody, you've probably heard, because people always love to tell you, regular expressions cannot match balanced parentheses. Here's the proof right here that that's just wrong. They can match balanced parentheses.
But we talked about that. We talked about that with was it Tom on in the book club when we talked about understanding computation, how you can't use regular expressions to parse HTML because they're not Turing complete, and Oniguruma is.
Yeah, you can do recursion and stuff like that in Oniguruma. You probably still shouldn't use it to parse HTML, but that's a whole other story. But yeah, this matches some kind of parenthetical expression, and then I assume it shells out. Yep, line 24, it shells out.
Yep. Yeah, I picked line 7 because it had a named variable, the backslash in brackets there.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. That also requires Oniguruma.
Oniguruma, but yeah, the 9 and 11 recursion is the real bread and butter. That's awesome.
So reading down, the really complicated part from line 10 says a real parenthesis, a raw parenthesis, followed by one or more non-opening or closing parenthesis characters, or another set of line 9 to line 13, which means another parenthetical expression, right? It's okay to have more parentheses as long as they are balanced. And then at the end of that, line 12 matches the raw closing parentheses.
So what?
So we originally read that other file as if it's this version, then we need to go get help. But what we're really saying is if you're past 187, if you're in 1.9, you go get superpowers.
That's right. You can have the good stuff. That's right.
So what exactly does this line do?
This is a named variable regular expression.
Okay.
So if there's a leading backslash, that is stuck in the backslash variable, and command is also stuck in the command variable. Then down in call, when it gets matched, you can see that they use $tilde, which gets the matched data object of the last regular expression. It's basically like an object-oriented version of the match. And they can index into that with names instead of numbers. So they're not having to say the first match or the second match or whatever. Instead, they can access them by names. And in the case of backslash, they do it to see if there was a backslash in front of the parenthetical, then they don't want to execute it. That's what lines 21 and 22 are doing. If there was not a backslash, then we need to strip the parentheses, which happens on line 19, off of both ends, and feed it to the shell, which happens on line 24.
I'm I think I get it, but I'm just wrapping my head around it.
Yeah, it's a pretty clever thing. So basically, if you are using .env with greater than 187, you may interpolate shell commands in your file in parentheses, and they will execute a shell command to get the value of something you're setting in an environment variable.
That's crazy.
Yep. That is so cool.
It's cool. I like it.
If it makes you feel any better, Chuck, every time I see oniguruma regular expressions, lead back out of the room. So I have to go now.
That's awesome. They're interesting in that, there's a lot going on, and that's a pretty small expression, but it's so powerful. I mean, seriously, try to write the Ruby code that does the same thing. It's a pain in the butt, You almost have to go character by character, count how many opening parentheses you have, subtract every time you see a closing parenthesis, see if you hit the end, it's balanced, Whereas, or you can just say, match this inside of this.
That's crazy.
So cool.
Yeah, it's very cool.
This is $, open paren, close paren.
That's right, yeah. $, open paren, close paren, yes.
Now we really are power users.
Yeah. Which is shell syntax, right? If you use $, open paren, close paren in a shell, that runs it in a subshell, doesn't it?
Yep.
Yep.
Very cool. So, okay, I can now explain the substitution lines back in the parser.
Cool.
So, line 10, it does substitution constants. If you are on 187 or below, the only constant will be the one that was loaded by the variable file, which allows for replacements among variables. If you are on 187 or higher, there will be two constants, the one that does the variables and the one that does the commands. So depending on that, you will either end up with an array of 1 or 2 items in it.
Nice.
And then down here, yeah, right there, it walks over whichever ones it has, citing the variables and the commands. And you can see that if on line 51 says if $1 does not equal single quote. So if your value was single quoted, variables and commands are not substituted. If it was double quoted or unquoted, it would not have a quote, then it gets variable and command substitution.
That is just cool. And does it do the variables first? Because this line is required before this line?
I would assume yes. I'm not sure it matters. They have a different syntax, right? It's $ followed by some word characters or some braces for variables, and $ followed by some parentheses for commands. So yeah, either way, I'm pretty sure it's unambiguous.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I believe variable would be the first thing in the array.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very cool.
Yeah, that's cool. That's the heart of .env right there.
Yep.
I like it.
I feel smarter already.
It's a simple library. I mean, it's just assigning a few things to the environment, but it's kind of interesting how many things you have to think about, like, the fact that it has to parse that file of bits, and that file has to mean something.
Yep.
So the one thing is you can't have a multi-line value in .env. There's no such thing. But you can have a double quoted string with new lines in it. So you can get it that way. It's pretty cool stuff. I like it.
Can't you have a multi-line value if you quote it?
If you quote it, good point.
Because
one or more not. Yes, you're right. You can. My mistake. Yep, you're right. A new line is a non-quoted character. So yeah, you're right. You can, if you quote it, you can have a multi-line value. Oh no, you can't, because line 37 ruins that. The regex allows for it, but line 37 does not.
Oh.
It checks one line at a time.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah. No multi-line values, but you can have a double quote and you can embed new lines in it because they get substituted on line 46.
I like this library because it really points up how trying to do something as air quotes simple as read a bunch of variables from a file, but what you're really trying to do is you're trying to write something that can read bash from Ruby. And just the number of edge cases that appear in these two, procedural, I mean, Ruby's in theory isn't procedural, but I mean it's procedural in the sense that, the scripts proceed one line at a time, and bash does the same thing, kind of proceeds one line at a time. And just the number of ignoring all of the power of bash for like mix-ins and functions and test characters and all and control logic, just the stuff that's going to read variables and export them. There are this many edge cases in it.
Yeah,
That's
but at
cool.
the same time, as complicated as it is to solve this simple problem, the thing that I'm going to turn my screen sharing off. The thing that I think is interesting is like in the command. I mean, that's really as complicated as it got.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we could just read through the code and go, oh yeah, this, that, we get it. And so, there wasn't any mind-boggling stuff in here to kind of break your brain with.
Yeah, and to be fair, they support a small subset of what bash is actually capable of, right?
Yeah.
The important bits.
They just pulled in the parts that they needed.
I love how simple this library was, and yet how much it taught us.
Yeah, it's fairly involved for what's basically a little bit of code.
Yeah, but the involved was stuff I wasn't using, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty good library. I like that one.
So we're 2 for 2 for reading a code library being just a genius idea.
Yeah, I agree.
We should do more genius.
I think the trifecta is now in play, and if we go 3 for 3, I think this is an official career hack thanks to Saran.
Yeah, I agree. It's been a good exercise.
Yep.
It's fun to figure out how other people do things, to go off on, oh, that's so silly, and then you get halfway through explaining why it's silly, and you're like, he knew what he was doing and I didn't.
Yep.
That makes it fun. Well, thank you both. I appreciate it. I had fun.
Thank you. It was
thank
fun.
You. This is fun.
Yeah, we'll have to plan another one.
I agree. Let's do this again sometime. Let's find something else to read.
Soon. Yep.
Awesome.
All right. Well, I should probably go get some stuff done today. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
All right. See ya.